You've been quieter than usual today. Not withdrawn, just careful, measuring your words before they leave your mouth. You told yourself it's the week catching up. Maybe you didn't sleep well. Maybe you've just been overthinking things. But today, the 21st of June, 2026, the moon is conjunct Denebola, the tail of the lion, a fixed star that ancient sky watchers flagged as one of the most charged points in the celestial map. This alignment is exact right now, in the precise, scrutinizing field of Virgo. Thousands are feeling this same pull toward caution without knowing why. And there's one dimension of this transit that almost no one is addressing, and it's the part that changes how you navigate the next several hours entirely. Notice what your body is doing right now. The slight tightness across your chest when you think about a recent conversation. The way your stomach tenses before you open certain emails or messages. The restless, looping thoughts that kept you hovering at the edge of sleep last night, replaying something you said or something you did not say. You have felt a strange combination of exhaustion and sudden alertness, almost like a quiet alarm humming in your nervous system. You sensed this coming, didn't you? Not as a disaster, but as a moment where what other people think of you suddenly matters more than usual. Some of you feel this as a heavy knot in the gut, others as an edgy, electric awareness in the shoulders and neck. Both are valid. Both are signs that your system is picking up a signal before your mind has fully named it. Stay with me until the end of this video, because by the time we close, you will have a clear map for these next hours. What to say, what not to say, what small move to make that quietly opens the right door instead of the wrong one. Do not skip ahead. The context of what is happening inside your body is the key to using this transit instead of being used by it. Right now, three kinds of people are especially feeling this alignment. There are those who are carrying a recent mistake, like a stone in the pocket, constantly checking whether anyone else has noticed. There are those who did nothing wrong, but suddenly feel exposed anyway, as if their private doubts have turned outward and grown eyes. And there are those who have been avoiding a necessary conversation, hoping time would make it irrelevant, but discovering that silence has only amplified the tension. If you recognize yourself even partly in any of these, this moon has a specific message for you. And even if you do not, you are still inside the same field of scrutiny. And the guidance here gives you an advantage most people around you will not have. I will explain exactly what this moon conjunct Denebola means for your reputation, your regrets, and your next moves. Stay with me. But first, you need to understand why your body, especially your gut and nervous system, is the first place this energy is speaking. Astronomically, we are at the exact peak right now. On June 21st, 2026, the moon forms a conjunction with Denebola in the sign of Virgo. In plain terms, the moon, your emotional barometer, your instinctive reactions, your habits of safety and self-protection, is sitting on one of the most charged fixed stars in the sky, the tail of the lion. This is the moment when emotional truth and public gaze braid together. You feel things more sharply, and you imagine others seeing you more clearly, sometimes too clearly. The sign of Virgo filters this contact through precision and analysis, so every small flaw, every offhand comment, every unfinished task is suddenly under a magnifying glass. You may notice yourself rereading your own messages, editing your sentences mid-air, or replaying past interactions because this conjunction is pressing on the gap between who you believe yourself to be and the version of you that appears to others. Stop. Feel that pulse? That slight tightening in your solar plexus, as we name it. That is the transit activating in you. To understand why today feels like a reckoning, you have to look back a little. In the last few weeks, there was a stretch of time where your efforts seemed to go unnoticed or tangled. Conversations stalled, emails went unanswered. You might have felt as if you were talking through glass. People heard your words, but not your intention. For some, this showed up as technical glitches or logistical snags that slowed plans. For others, it was more internal, self-doubt rising, an urge to withdraw, a sense that it was safer to edit yourself than to risk being fully seen. That period was not random. It was a compression phase, pressing your unspoken worries about judgment and criticism into a tight container. Like air being pumped into a sealed vessel, the pressure built slowly. You may have noticed yourself second-guessing posts, censoring honest feedback, or downplaying your own needs to keep the peace. Today's moon on Denebola is the moment that container is tapped, not to explode, but to release just enough pressure that you can no longer pretend nothing is there. The unease you feel now is the accumulation of those last weeks asking for closure. This is preparation revealing itself as opportunity, not punishment arriving unannounced. And here is where the energy shifts into something more personal. Because the same transit that exposes you also offers a door, and for some of you, that door is especially clear. Virgo, your moment is the sharpest tonight. You are standing exactly where Moon and Denebola meet, and it feels like a spotlight and an X-ray at the same time. You have been in a season where your standards for yourself were painfully high, yet your outer life did not always reflect that effort. Tiny errors felt huge. Minor criticism landed like a verdict. You have likely been carrying a private list of should-haves and if-onlys, especially around work, health routines, and the way you show up for others. This conjunction falls in your first house of self, your body, your name, and the way people meet you. It clarifies where your identity has been tangled with being useful, correct, or indispensable. According to the Egyptian decans transmitted by the Liber Hermetis, the second decan of Leo, near Denebola's domain, is governed by Jupiter rather than the Sun alone. It turns raw pride into generous vision and gives those touched by it a mission of transmission rather than domination. Tonight, that same current runs through you. Your perfectionism is being redirected away from self-punishment towards service that actually nourishes others and yourself. What does that look like on the ground? A comment that once would have crushed you now becomes data you can use. A misstep at work can be turned into a demonstration of integrity when you name it calmly and fix it without drama. You might finally set a boundary with someone who only calls when they need something, or you update a plan you secretly knew was inefficient. Reputation-wise, this is the hour where a quiet, humble correction carries 10 times the weight of any polished performance. Doors open not because you look flawless, but because you appear trustworthy. Inside, the deeper transformation is this. You are no longer willing to confuse self-erasure with humility. You start to recognize that scrutiny does not always mean danger. Sometimes it is simply light, revealing what was already true. The anxiety in your gut becomes a compass, not a cage. This is your reset, a chance to let the person you privately aspire to be finally match the person the world is allowed to see. And here's where the energy shifts again, moving from the core of identity into the realms of status and recognition. So far, we have been talking about the ones in the direct beam of this moon, but there is another group on the front line of this transit, those whose public roles, careers, and responsibilities are in motion, even if quietly. For you, the knot in the stomach is less about who am I, and more about what do they think of what I do. You might have sensed even before today that a review, an evaluation, or a subtle shift in hierarchy was on the horizon. Today, as the moon brushes Denebola, your 10th house of reputation and authority lights up. This is where the themes of reversal and judgment become very concrete. An overlooked effort can suddenly be noticed, but so can a corner you cut, a promise you delayed, or a standard you allowed to slip. If you have been carrying quiet resentment about being unseen, This transit may surface that feeling in sharp relief. If, on the other hand, you have been coasting on old achievements, you may feel an almost irrational fear that the ground under your status is less solid than it appears. Yet the door opening here is subtle and powerful. A boss, client, or collaborator might offer feedback that stings, but inside that sting is exactly the information you need to pivot. A project could change direction suddenly, exposing weak foundations which, once reinforced, make your position harder to shake later. There is a narrow window tonight where admitting, "I missed that, but I can correct it now," upgrades how others trust you. Deep down, the transformation is about loosening the grip of external validation. You begin to see that your authority rests less on never being criticized and more on how you respond when you are. This is your recalibration point. Your role in the world is not taken from you, it is refined. So far, we have explored how this moon into Denebola beam cuts into self-image and status. You can already feel it when your posture shifts as someone looks at you, or your heart rate ticks up before you open a work-related message. But there is another arena where this transit works very quietly, behind closed doors, in your most personal bonds. And here's where the energy shifts into the space of intimacy, debt, and emotional entanglement. Both states are correct. Agitation and clarity are two sides of the same activation. Your system alerting you that this is a window where course corrections carry extra weight. The risk in both cases is dispersion. If you let the anxiety run without direction, it turns into self-attack. If you ride only the clarity without reflection, you might make swift, irreversible choices. The task is to acknowledge which current you are in and then give it a channel, a conversation, a journal page, a carefully chosen action, so it does not leak into every corner of your life. Remember earlier when we spoke about that strange pulse in your chest and the tightness in your gut? That was your body's way of telling you, long before this video did, that you are in a reckoning window where your relationship to criticism can either harden into shame or soften into wisdom. This is the loop we are closing now. The symptoms you felt were not random, they were the opening notes of this exact transit. Before we move into the shadow side, consider this. Are you rereading a single message, post, or comment tonight, as if it contains your entire worth? The answer to what that means about you is not in the message, it is in the intensity with which you cling to it. This is the moment to notice that intensity and decide whether it serves you or only feeds the shadow of self-judgment. Now, let's look at that shadow and what you can actually do with it. When was the last time you felt this kind of expansion and pressure at once, like an invitation and a test standing in the same doorway? Because as potent as this moon conjunct Denebola is, there is a side almost no one talks about. This energy can seduce you into extremes. Feeling suddenly seen, you might overcorrect, deleting accounts, quitting a job on the spot, ending relationships in one decisive message, or issuing a public statement in the heat of emotion. Feeling cornered, you might lash out, turning your inner critic outward and attacking others to relieve your own discomfort. Or, in an attempt to outrun shame, you could throw yourself into overpromising, taking on more than you can sustain just to prove something no one demanded from you. The shadow here is self-sabotage through excess, believing that the only way to escape judgment is to perform a grand gesture, the dramatic apology, the sweeping resignation, the definitive "I am done." You risk burning bridges that did not need to be destroyed. Bold action is not the same as blind action. The difference is whether your choice still makes sense 12 hours after your nervous system has calmed. Before any major move in this window, ask yourself 3 questions. First, am I choosing this to move toward a value I care about, or just to get away from discomfort? Second, if no one were watching, would I still make this choice? Third, Have I allowed this decision to sit through one full emotional cycle, or am I acting at the peak? If you cannot answer those calmly, it is not yet time. So far, we have explored the mechanics, the invitations, and the shadows of this moon on Denebola. You can already feel it when your body oscillates between wanting to fix everything now and wanting to disappear. But there is something crucial we have not yet translated into action. How to walk through this rare door without setting fire to the room you are leaving. Here is how to work with this transit in clear, practical terms. First, choose one arena, not 5. Pick a single conversation, project, or pattern that clearly links to reputation, regret, or judgment, and focus there. When this kind of energy peaks, scattering your attention dilutes it. Decide, for example, that tonight you will only address that lingering email you have avoided, or that one miscommunication that still sits in your chest. Write down the situation and define the smallest honest step you can take within the next 24 hours. Channeling the intensity into one specific area turns vague shame into effective course correction. Second, check your foundations before you respond. If you feel called to correct something publicly or make a significant change, pause long enough to gather facts, numbers, and context. Review messages, contracts, or timelines involved. Make sure your memory of the event matches the actual record. This is not about over-intellectualizing. It is about ensuring that your corrective action rests on solid ground rather than on distorted fear. The more grounded your response, the more this transit upgrades your credibility instead of shaking it. Third, expect resistance inside and out, and decide ahead of time not to interpret it as a sign you are wrong. When you shift patterns of self-criticism or speak a vulnerable truth, part of you will want to retreat. Others may react defensively, especially if they benefited from your silence. Anticipate that pushback and measure your progress not by how easy it feels, but by how aligned it is with the person you are becoming. Quiet, steady follow-through over the next few days will matter more than any big declaration tonight. And finally, practice deliberate humility. This does not mean shrinking or apologizing for existing. It means being willing to say, "Here is where I misjudged, and here is what I am doing differently," without dramatizing your error or begging for absolution. Humility keeps your ego from hijacking the transit in both directions, from inflating when praised and from collapsing when criticized. As you light that gray or deep blue candle, or place your written regret under obsidian or black tourmaline, let your intention be clarity, not escape. You are not here to prove your worth tonight. You are here to align your actions with the worth you already carry. Between June 27th and July 1st, the next key alignment draws a line under what begins tonight. Old conversations finally reach honest, healing resolution. Misread messages spiral into lasting emotional confusion. It's binary. There is no soft middle path where things sort themselves out without your involvement. What determines which side you land on is whether you pause to clarify before reacting. I'll give you the precise mechanic in the next video. Right now, in this very moment, the sky has delivered exactly what we sensed at the opening. That uncomfortable gap between who you know yourself to be and how the world is seeing you. The moon conjunct Denebola isn't punishing you. It's illuminating the precise places where honesty, not pride, becomes your greatest protection. This transit asks one thing, not that you perform courage publicly, but that you practice it quietly, within yourself, right now while the light is still this clear. Sit with what surfaced today. The discomfort you felt watching this video wasn't accidental. The stars brought you here because you were ready for this reckoning. The tale of the lion teaches us that wisdom lives just past the moment we almost looked away. Hidden wisdom. Right now, as the moon contacts Denebola, I want to ask you something specific. In the past 48 hours, has criticism you received landed as a wound or as a quiet confirmation of something you already knew needed your attention? Subscribe if you want daily celestial guidance that connects the movement of the stars to what you are actually living through. Tomorrow we look at how Virgo's inner critic becomes your greatest strategic ally when the sky shifts into sharper alignment. Moon's energy frees your potential now,